And good evening, welcome. It is Monday, it is Saint Brigid's Day, bank holiday here in Ireland. It is Monday the 5th of February 2024. This is episode number 263 of Live Irish Myths. I'm your host, Anthony Murphy. For the next hour to an hour and a half, we're going to be exploring Imbolc and Bridget. Now, we are departing very briefly from the top 50 books about Irish mythology, which we will conclude, hopefully, next week. We had gotten up to number 40 in last week's episode, but we're taking a break from that this week. I did say we would do this. Yesterday was astronomical Imbolc, the cross-quarter day that marks the halfway point in days between winter solstice and spring equinox. Spring is coming. If you're joining us on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel. Ring the notification bell so that you get notified of future live streams and video uploads here on the channel. If you're watching on Facebook, please do comment, and your comments can be shown on the screen, and we'll say hello to you. And do the same on YouTube, of course. And regardless of where you are or what you're doing, please do consider becoming a patron of Mythical Ireland and support the work that goes on here. And that address there is patreon.com/Mythical Ireland, patreon.com/Mythical Ireland. Thank you very much. So I will say hello to those who are here. Elaine Dent Lingenfelter, shockingly, is the first to comment. I mean, no, she's not. Never, ever second or third to come. Actually, it has happened. Elaine is saying it's cool in Texas today, 16 Celsius. Well, you'll be glad to hear it was 12 here in the Boyne Valley. 16, more like a summer day in Ireland. Wayne Bird says, evening, Anthony, bright blessings, everyone. The Fornox book will be interesting. Did you manage to get much sleep after that long day? Yes, I still do. Yes, I managed somehow to catch up on much required sleep, but I've been working night and day on the Fornox monograph. I'm glad to report that the book is going very well. Major progress. And yeah, I'm excited about it. All going well. It will be published by spring equinox. The next festival, as it were, the next of the astronomical festivals. I'm going to share a link where you can pre-order the Fornox monograph. Yeah, there's lots to say about the Fornox monograph. It's going to be the biggest of the monographs so far. Looks like it's going to run to about 150 pages. The initial plan was 120, but it's definitely going to be bigger. Yeah, there'll be photographs that haven't been seen before. There'll be detail that hasn't been, I don't think, provided before. An exploration of its archaeology, its astronomy, and bit about mythology and the place name. And yeah, the first book about Fornox. If you discount the paper that PJ Hartnett published in 1957 about the excavations, which had taken place 7 years earlier in 1950, which I suppose couldn't really be described as a book and isn't available in the shops and is a specialist excavation report. So if you discount that, this will be the first book about Fornox. So get your orders in and hope that you enjoy it when it is published. John McHugh is here in and out tonight. But hi all. Well, it's great to see you. I hope you're in good form, Joan. And in and out is fine. I mean, you know, we're happy that you're here in some capacity. Helen Hurst Chater says, greetings. Yes, indeed. Imbolc, greetings to you, or Imbolc, if you... Imbolc, if you what is that called when one letter eclipses, isn't it? Eclipses, when one letter sort of eclipses the pronunciation of another. Rex Fortenberry is here. Greetings and salutations, mighty Tua, from a mighty cool Irish day in Louisiana. Ready to get down with some mythin. Brilliant stuff, Rex. Always a pleasure. Good afternoon to you. Hope you're in good form. Brendan Byrne is saying warmer than it should be and windy. Hope everyone is well. What is the actual temperature right now? I'll tell you what it is at Dublin Airport. According to the METAR, it's 11 at Dublin. Tuesday Thompson is greeting everybody a happy Mythology Monday. And a greetings to you. Hello. Mel Phrase. Hi all, I finally get to catch a live. Well, hello Mel Phrase. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. Hope you enjoy yourself. And we look forward to the banter and the chat. Sue Prenter is watching. Evening, everyone. Looking forward to this session. This session, by the way, will be by necessity a repeat of material, some in parts a repeat of material that has featured in some of our live streams before. I know we did a live stream about Bridget, and I know we probably did a live stream about, like if you go back to this time last year, episode number 211 was called Bridget and Imbolc, and this one's called Imbolc and Bridget. However, there's new information today, so we'll make it a bit different and a bit more up to date. Anyway, Sue, good to see you. Joe Butler, Auntie Joe, is in sunny Colorado where the snow is melting, but there's more coming. Just when we were getting excited about the possibility that Bridget was going to bring her summertime blessings to you. We're grateful for the moisture shared to the MI pages. Thank you. So you can also watch the live stream on the Mythical Ireland community group on Facebook and on Mythical Ireland Creatives. Thanks to Joe, who has kindly shared it. Sorry, I'm losing my script. Not quite my script. Something I will be reading. Something I will be reading from. Anne McCallum says, hello, Antone and all the mighty two. I hope everything's in good form. Weather here is dry today. No precipitation at all, and a balmy 2 Celsius. Wow. Still completely overcast, but we'll take it gladly over significant snowstorms, right? Britt Griffin says, hello, folks. Here in Northern Ontario, where there is not enough snow and not enough cold, need cheering up. Let's try and do that for you. I was at a function yesterday. I quite genuinely was. My father's 80th birthday party. And the bar lady came over and said, sir, I see you have an empty glass. Would you like another? And I said, what the hell would I want with 2 empty glasses? Britt, you're very welcome. And we'll cheer you up with some terrible dad jokes. And if not, through some general banter and humour. Rachel Toner has joined us. So happy I came across this welcome springtime. Looking forward for it to unfold. And all the newness of it. Yes, indeed. Spring. Love this time of year. Love it. And Scott Doherty says, hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a great day. Yeah, pretty good. It's a bank holiday here. This is a brand new bank holiday. We only started celebrating it last year. And thanks to a concerted campaign on behalf of a number of women who are campaigning to have a bank holiday coinciding with Brigit's Day. So I think, I'm pretty sure that's the first public holiday in Ireland celebrating a woman saint rather than a male saint. Because we all know St. Patrick's Day is a big excuse for a shindig. Steve Martinson has joined us. Hello there, Steve. Good afternoon to you. Hope you're in good form. Valerie Gallagher is here too. And she's saying it's a fine sunny day in Rhode Island. Brilliant stuff. Spread the joy, Valerie. Spread it around. Simon O'Tusafar is saying hello from a mild, long, dreary day in Kinsale. Can't wait for the good weather. Question for you. Do you pronounce the B in Imbolc? I do, but I suspect it shouldn't be pronounced actually Imbolc. But I do. I say Imbolc. Yeah, it was a bit grey here today too. I like seeing the sun, Colleen M. Gudio, I think it is, says hello from Florida, Anthony. Cold and rainy. And 65. What is that? We need to know that. 65 F to C is 18. Wow. I'll take that. That's a half decent summer's day here. Colleen, welcome. I feel like we have Ireland weather today. You have, but it's kind of warmer than it would be in Ireland. Just a little bit. But come here, it's not a kick in the backside off what it would be, say, in early summer. Alva Kelly says, Vanity, Anthony, and all the two. Spring is coming. It's a new beginning. Sláinte. Oh, yeah. What's Fornox, asks Rachel. Fornox is a megalithic monument, the same age as Newgrange, located less than 10 miles from Newgrange in the county of Meath, or 15 kilometres if you prefer. A fascinating, fascinating monument. You can read about it on the Mythical Ireland website, but I'm excited to tell you that there's going to be a book about it, and that book is coming soon. Hopefully, all going well, by spring equinox. So in around 6 weeks' time. I'll share the link to the Fornox page. I will. Hang on. I'm after don't know what I'm doing here. Rachel, sorry. And it turns out I don't think I pasted the link to the Fornox monograph after all that. So I've pasted the link to where you can read about Fornox, and now I'm going to paste the link where you can pre-order your Fornox monograph. And that's on mythicalireland.com under shop and books. So apologies, I pasted it, but I never hit the return, the arrow button thingy, yoke me buzzer. You know what I'm saying. Now, where was I? Where was I? I was much further up. I apologize. I have slalomed all the way to the bottom. Ian Whelan is in the house. Ian, good evening to you. Watching on YouTube. Hi to all. Welcome, welcome. Sandra Boothroyd is watching. Sandra, good evening. Hope you're in good form. Tom King is watching. Greetings from Kildare Town. Just wrapping an incredible festival on St. Brigid's Holiday Monday. Enjoy the story, my friends. Tom is down in Kildare celebrating Bridget. Good stuff, Tom. Erica Bows in the house. Good afternoon to all. Well, a good afternoon to you. And just because she can, she's watching on Facebook and on YouTube. Unless there's another Erica Bow that we don't know about. Erica, you're very, very welcome. Peter Whitson says, Happy St. Brigid's Day, Anthony. That was, it's a funny. So in Ireland, we celebrate the public holidays on the date closest to the date. On the Monday closest to the date. St. Brigid's Day is actually the 1st of February, but Imbolc is never on the 1st of February. And maybe we'll discuss that a little bit later on. But happy St. Brigid's Day, happy Imbolc, happy springtide to you. Sheila Gunn is watching from sunny Ontario, but she doesn't tell us whether it's warm or cold. I suspect cold. Yes, indeed. Caitlin Moon is saying hello from a blustery Dublin. Hope you're all back down to earth after your defense. Is that what you call it? And well done on all that. And I hope your house living quarters are drying out. I think that's been a bit of an issue. Desiree Riley's in the house. Missed the last few episodes, but happy to be here today, as we are always happy to see you, Desiree. And we might hear the El Doggos before too long. Sally Siggins is watching from Sligo. Isn't there a grand stretch in the evenings? Actually, yes. Sunset this afternoon apparently was something like 5:10. I mean, midwinter, winter solstice sunset is 4 p.m. So, yeah, there's a grand stretch in the evening. Sally, I hope you're in good form. Mez Marion is watching. Made it to live. Been a while. A refresher course is always good. Thank you for sharing. Love your dad jokes. Do not encourage the dad jokes. Catherine Cleary is watching from Southern California, where we're experiencing more flooding from torrential rain. Yikes. Happy to be in Ireland, even if virtually. Hope we don't get too much of the old flooding. I mean, a nice sprinkling of rain now and again, just to keep the place cool and damp and keep things growing is nice, you know. Bronwyn McCallum is watching. Happy St. Brigid's Day bank holiday. Hello, Anthony and all. Well, hello to you, Bronwyn. Hope you're in good form. Pleasure to see you in the library. Dawn Hilton is late again. I'm not watching the clock. Dawn Hilton, 14 minutes past 8. Yes, these things aren't being noted or anything. Carmela Gitanjali Bainey is saying it's raining in old Sydney town. Wow. I wonder, is rain sort of a rarity in Sydney? Carmela, good morning to you. It's Tuesday morning there, if you're in Sydney, Australia, that is. Unless there's another Sydney that I don't know about, which there could be. Good morning to you. Happy Tuesday from all of us who are still in Monday. Jim, is it Oppecker, is in sunny New Jersey. I've been to New Jersey. Jim, pleasure to welcome you. Good afternoon to you. I was in Princeton. Yes, in the university, but staying in Princeton town. Not a city, is it? Would you call it a city? It's not a village, that's for sure. But anyway, Millward is here. Hello, all. Hope everyone's had a wonderful Imbolc. Yes, indeed. Pat Lako Connolly is in Western Vermont, and the long-awaited sun has come out. Brilliant stuff. Well, spread it around, you know. Sophia B. Reed Fisher is in Southern Ontario. Missing the snow we usually have. Lovely. Brigit's Day is being formally recognised. Yes, indeed. It's fantastic. And lots of people in Ireland really happy because it's another day off work for most people. Rachel Toner, it's so wonderful. Well done to the women who made it happen. Patron saint of Ireland. Good Saint Brigid. Yes, indeed. We'll be exploring a little bit of her story shortly. And I'm just looking for any comments that I missed. Adina Sparks is saying, afternoon, Anthony and the Thua. Hope all are in good health. It's a warm and calm day before the next storm in New Mexico. You get many storms down there, but I imagine it's quite an arid, hot place. Yes, defense went really well, says Caitlin, aside from the fire drill right beforehand. That's just to keep you on your toes, you know. Yeah. Or to distract those whom you're making. Yeah, that's a ploy, isn't it? Yes, distract them, you know. Maureen Joyce, I'm joking, of course. Greetings from a sunny and warm Lexington, Kentucky. Hope all are well. Good afternoon, Maureen. In good form here. Thank you for asking. Sheila says it's certainly not sunbathing weather. A bit nippy still, but the sun is welcome. Yes, indeed. Mel Phrase is saying Imbolc marks the start of meteorological spring for me, but California is grey and dreary with gentle rain today and about 13 Celsius right now. Welcome reprieve from the heavy winds of the weekend, though. That sounds mightily Irish. That entire weather report you've just given. Heavy winds at the weekend, 13 degrees, grey and dreary with gentle rain. I mean, it just varies in Ireland between gentle rain and heavy rain. Or in winter, cold rain, and in summer, warm rain. The full Irish Gary is in the house. Good evening, great and good to another fine day on the sod. In the belly, blessings to all. Imbolc. In my belly. Sally Siggins, we get an extra 20 minutes over here, though, in the West. Sounds like you're boasting. Hang on. Now, hang on, Sally. Just wait now for a second. Yeah, but you also, the sun comes up later because you're West. Comes up later in the morning, hangs around later in the afternoon. Yeah, you forgot to mention that very, very, very important point. Who else? Paul McFeely is saying, hey all, hope you're all well. But I can't speak for them, Paul, but I can speak for myself. I'm in good form. I hope you are too. Don Hilton is laughing. Yes, late. Michael Trott is saying, was the Celtic or pre-Celtic Bridget similar to the tribe in Britain, the Brigantes? Some went to Ireland or the goddess Brigantia, sunny here in New Zealand, our national holiday, with an 1840 treaty with some of the Maori tribes. It can be a challenging, day for the politicians, though. Kia ora all from Tuesday morning, Mondayizing the holidays. Good to see some continuance of governance in Northern Ireland this week with the world wobbling. You're not wrong. Good morning to you, Michael. And it has been suggested there's a connection with the Brigantes, but I suspect that's extremely tenuous, is my understanding of it. Fergal de Cantun, Fergal Canton, as I have previously introduced him, is fighting off an imbug in bed. Oh no. I don't know what kind of bug it is, but hot whiskey. That's what everybody recommends. Get well soon, Fergal. Teresa Collins is saying, Imbolc and blessed Bridget's weekend, everyone. Thank you, Teresa. Welcome to the live stream. I'm up to date with the comments. Well, no, I'm not, because tea has just arrived. Late. Tea arrived at 2019. Yes, that'll go on your record. Tea Coffee's all round. You thought I was going to say teas all round, didn't you? That was a tease. Oh, never mind. It's worse he's getting. Yeah, well, I woke up this morning and my bed was full of stir fry. I must have been sleepwalking again. We're talking today about Imbolc. It is that time of year. Yesterday, I announced earlier, yesterday was Astronomical Imbolc. If you have a copy of the Mythical Ireland 2024 calendar, and I'm just taking mine down off the wall, you'll know that, the February picture in this year's calendar is a triple conjunction of the Moon and Venus and Jupiter over Sheed and Broga, Sheon Vru, Newgrange to you and I. And if you look under Sunday, the 4th of February 2024, you will see that it is Imbolc. So it's in your calendar. If you haven't got one, you can still get them. They're reduced to a tenner. €10 for an 11-month calendar. And only 11 months because January is over. But you can always look at the picture and admire it, you know. T says, no time for tea. Sally is asking if anybody left out a brought Bridget on Bridget's Eve. I didn't. I hesitate to announce. Probably should, but I didn't. T is stuffing their face with beef and peppered sauce and homemade chips. Wow, impressive. You should be sharing that around. Movanway says, I found an old church dedicated to St. Brigid in Herefordshire, close to the border with Wales. Wow. Lashing rain, Donegal, says Saoirse Ní Cheandal. Come here, listen. Saoirse, do us a favour, will you, there now? Just keep it up there now. Don't be sending it down here, like. Oh, I see. I'm just looking at the Met here and the rainfall radar. It's literally probably the only county it's raining in right now. Looks like there was a bit of rain across the top of Derry earlier on. Oh no, there could be a bit arriving into Sligo. Sally Siggins, you need to get your umbrella up. And Saoirse is saying, greetings from Tirconnell. Okay, so there was an interesting thing that happened in conjunction with St. Brigid's Day, which was the publication of, I suppose you could call it a paper. And it's being made available for free, so you can download and read it. I downloaded it today, printed it off, and read all 26 pages of it. And let's just say, in places, as I am inclined to do in preparation for tonight's episode, in places, I did what you might call a little bit of highlighting and underlining and marginalia. For instance, probably the busiest page in the whole paper. Yeah, that's what I did. All that highlighting and notes and all the rest. So I'll read this out to you. This is from the Royal Irish Academy Facebook page. Published today. Bridget of Kildare is the first Irish saint to be celebrated in detail by Irish writers. Her cult enjoyed great depth and popularity. Nevertheless, Bridget's very existence has been doubted. She has been recast as a pre-Christian goddess, despite an overwhelming disparity in evidence. Bridget has been treated differently to Irish male saints, becoming a secondary character in her own biographies, reductively overshadowed by a barely attested goddess. Controversial start. Historian ELva Johnston argues that it is time for a revitalized appreciation of Brigit as an actual woman. In her article, Making St. Brigid Real in the Early Middle Ages, published in Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, Archaeology, Culture, History, Literature, Volume 123. And you can read the full article, available through open access. And I'm going to just share the link. I should have copied it already, but anyway, where you can, hopefully this is available to everybody around the world and not restricted by region or anything like that. I'm just pasting that link there where you can download this very paper and read it for yourself. Keith Doran is saying good morning from Tasmania. Good morning, Keith. Happy Tuesday to you from all of us here. We're not all in Monday. There are some other Tuesdayers there. One from New Zealand and one from Sydney. So good morning to all of you. Michaela Lewis is saying Goddess Bridget. The barely attested. Yeah. I'm hoping, says Sally, that old hag lets our lovely summer goddess free again soon. We've had enough winter now. Thanks. Great February photo in your calendar, though. Thank you very much, Sally. Sally, something you might be interested in, and I'm not sure if you're hanging around for the whole episode. I think it's in this paper, but there was some... Maybe it wasn't. I'm just trying to think, where did I read that? There was some dispute, basically, about the idea of... No, maybe it wasn't this paper. It was somewhere else. A dispute that of the idea that, you know, Brigid and the Cailleach sort of battle each other for the seasons. You told me something that there's maybe distinct folklore in Sligo with regards to that. That might dispute that, you know. Debbie Sheehy is saying good morning from Melbourne. Hello there, Debbie, and delighted to see you. Happy Tuesday to you from a cold, overcast, and it was actually, when I think about it, doing a tiny amount of precipitation earlier. Bit of drizzle. Right. So, should I talk about Brigit, Saint or Goddess first, or should I talk about Imbolc first? I suppose we should probably talk about Brigit and the new stuff, and then if we have time, we'll go back and just talk about the significance of Imbolc and specifically the earliest reference to it in Cormac's glossary. Gemma McGowan is saying greetings from Douth. Everyone, hello, good evening, even Gemma. Probably the closest viewer to me right now, geographically. I don't think there's anybody from Drogheda watching. Not that they've announced, anyway. Gemma, always a pleasure. Hope you're in good form. Connie is saying Facebook keeps freezing, so back to YouTube. Greetings from wet LA. Yeah, I hear you're having lots of rain there at the moment. How does a witch buy her herbs? Imbolc. Took me a second to figure that one out. Yes. That's as good as most of my jokes. That's not a compliment. So I read ELva Johnston's. I think it's a paper. It's or an article today about Bridget, and so yeah. Look, I think it's very interesting, and look, she makes a very good point. However, I am going to make some. There's going to be a bit of arguing here. I am not just going to. Let's just say I won't be agreeing with everything that was written. But it was very interesting. And she makes a very good point, which is that there are two lives of Brigid, two hagiographies, saints' lives. One is Cogitosis's life of Saint Brigid, and the other is the one that's called Vita Prima, or its full name is it Vita Prima Sanctae Brigite or something like that, which is Latin for the principal or the first life, you know, as in the most important biography. And they were both written early. We'll get to that, but I believe both of them are sort of 7th century, 600s. You know, within a century or so of Bridget having been alive. Yeah, the broad in a broad stroke, what ELva Johnston's paper is about, and it's called "Making Saint Brigid Real in the Early Middle Ages." What it seems to be principally about is how, first of all, how well attested the saint Brigid is versus the goddess. So the goddess Brigid, everything that you read about the goddess Brigid, almost everything you read about her on the internet, is likely to be questionable in terms of its provenance. The very best articles about any mythological character are those which are accompanied by copious footnotes and references and a bibliography. Quite often, you'll read articles, and I have done, about Bridget on the internet, and I'm talking specifically here about the goddess first of all, where you read all sorts of fantastic things about what a wonderful woman she was, but with no footnotes or references as to where this or what this information is specifically based upon. What Johnston appears to be doing in her paper is to be saying, well, we have a lot of information in the two saints' lives, in the two hagiographies of Bridget, to not just suppose, but to almost unquestionably know that there was a Bridget who lived in the early medieval period. So that was one. And the other then was about considering the idea that Bridget actually was a real person. And that even though the accounts of her miracles are obviously quite fantastical, I would almost say mythological actually is a word you could use to describe the miracles. That underscoring or underlying the Bridget that we are presented with in the hagiographies was a real woman who existed in times when society had ruling classes and had a structure, or it had strata, and there was a certain deference to the ruling classes, etc., and the poor and the downtrodden had nobody to champion their cause or to speak up on their behalf, and Bridget provides that. So there's all of that. So there's stuff that's sort of, I think, missing, that doesn't fully make this a balanced discussion of the situation. Anyway, I'm going to try and summarize it. What I'm conscious of is not reading large sections of it, because even though it is subject to open access article, it's an open access article under the terms of the Creative Commons Attribution License, which permits use, distribution, and reproduction in any medium, provided the original work is properly cited. Yeah, I know there's that, but it's 26 pages. I'm not going to be able to read that, and I don't want to read it, but I'll read sections of it. Rachel Toner says, New Age versus Christianity. Good luck. You're not wrong, because there's a big element of that in here. Sally says, Saint Brigid, I think, went through whatever went... sorry, I'm reading that wrong. I will take my time. Saint Brigid, I think, though, whether associated directly or not, has a place in our history in her own right. Happy to have a holiday in her own. Yeah, absolutely. Correct and right, Sally. Correct. Catherine Woodruff is watching from Wisconsin. Hello, Catherine. Good afternoon to you. Just trying to catch up. Sally is saying the whole idea of dual personas of Bridget the young woman and Bridget the old hag is a well-known story across Europe, even potentially the inspiration for Grimm's brothers' Snow White. Brilliant. Leslie O'Neill is watching from Bettystown. Hello, Leslie. The second closest person, because somebody's watching from Douth. I think Douth's slightly closer. Good evening to you. Catherine is watching from Glastonbury. I just walked to Bride's Mound on Imbolc. Keep up your good work. Yes. And that little town, that little part of Glastonbury called Beckery, which is from the Irish Bug era, small Ireland. Michelle Hall is watching from Termonfeckin. Hello, Michelle. What a pleasure. Yeah. So she's saying, as in Johnston, the author of the paper, is saying that, these are among the earliest extant documents commemorating Bridget. Bridget died apparently sometime around 524/526 AD. She's a keystone saint of the early medieval Irish Church, and the object of ongoing veneration for almost as long as history has been recorded. In other words, around about the time we started recording history in Ireland, as in writing stuff down, that's the time that that's the time that Brigid lived and her cult began to emerge. So the Vita Sancta Brigite by Cogitosis, he was a monk of Kildare. And of course, Kildare is the place most strongly associated with Bridget. I know she has links with Faughart outside Dundalk in County Louth, which claims her birthplace. Faughart is claimed as her birthplace, but of course, she established her monastery at Kildare. And don't forget, too, in all of this, we will have the whole discussion about Kildare as an ecclesiastical centre, as a centre of church power, vying against Armagh. And of course, Armagh has very strong association with that other very well-known saint, Saint Patrick. And the other one is the anonymous Vita Prima Sancta Brigite. And these documents lie at the beginnings of Irish hagiography. In other words, these are the first saints' lives to be compiled in Ireland. So from that point of view, they're important documents and they're very historic. At this early stage, the portrayals of Bridget displayed an astonishing complexity, suggesting a well-developed and vibrant cult. And it is even arguable, this is an important point, it is even arguable that Bridget is the very first Irish person about whom Irish writers wrote in detail. Wow. So there you go. So I'm skimming through, and where I'm going to make my own comments as we go along. I'm going to read some, I'm going to comment, I'm going to expand, and I'm going to argue where necessary. Bridget, this is on page, if you've downloaded the document and you want to follow along, this is on page 3. Medieval Irish writers imagined Bridget as one of the earliest Christians in Ireland, as the founder of the great ecclesiastical institution of Kildare, and as the sole woman in the Irish church with the status of a bishop and as a patron of the powerless. So that's just what I mentioned momentarily a few moments ago in terms of Bridget being a champion of the poor. More recently, she has been interpreted as the echo of a goddess, inundated by a tsunami of Christian patriarchy, perhaps the avatar of a universal divine feminine. Now, if you look there, that's footnote number 10, and if you look at footnote number 10, the person who's is basically been given the attribution of saying that Bridget, the saint, was an echo of a goddess, is Mary Condren. And her book, The Serpent and the Goddess, Women, Religion and Power in Celtic Ireland, New York, 1989. And if you have been watching our recent episodes, you'll know that Mary Condren's book, the same one, is on our top 50 list of Irish books, books to be read if you want to know about Irish mythology. In fact, what position did I award it? I think it was in the 20s, wasn't it? I'll tell you now, because I'm keeping a note. I'll tell you momentarily. Pardon me just for one moment. Mary Condren, where are you? Number 24. Yeah. And that's how important I believe Mary Condren's book to be. So Mary's getting some credit here, if that's what you call it. I get the impression, I'm just going to say this as a comment, and I'd probably need to read this again and digest it again several times. But I get the impression that ELva Johnston is, although I know that the purpose of the paper ostensibly is to say that Bridget was a real person. I get the impression that ELva Johnston favours the idea that Bridget was, in fact, a big figurehead of the early Irish Church, and that there's very little to be said about a pre-Christian or a pagan Bridget, a goddess, as it were. She mightn't be entirely wrong about that, but there's a few things that I want to throw into the... There's a few hand grenades I want to throw into the room. Just put it like that. Zoe, its most famous illuminated manuscript was the Book of Kildare, which no longer survives. That is very right. Kildare, Church of the Oak, built on the ancient axis of midwinter sunrise in around 470 AD. It was a centre of learning and art, including metalwork and goldsmithing. Yeah, you see, this is the stuff. Now, Zoe, I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying that's the sort of stuff that you see copied and pasted right across the internet. Tell me the sources for all that information. Tell me where... Now, I know that some of it is true, but tell me where it is that it is said Kildare definitely means the Church of the Oak. That bit about axis of midwinter sunrise, the axis from where? I'd immediately question that. It was a centre of learning and art. Well, you could say pretty much all monasteries were centres of learning and art. Metalwork and goldsmithing, I'd like to know the source for that. This is the sort of stuff I'm very picky about. I see that. I want footnotes telling me where all that information comes from, you know. Only women were permitted to enter the hedge enclosure with the eternal flame. Again, would love to footnote on that, which was fanned by Bellows. I know that Cormac's glossary mentions an eternal flame, and I think that's the only mention of an eternal flame, and a lot has been made of that. Legend holds that 19 druid priestesses tended her perpetual flame of the goddess. Again, give me the footnote. Tell me exactly where that comes from. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I'd love to see. I want to know all the time. Give me the sources. Give me the sources. Samantha Healy has arrived late tonight. That's okay. We have absolutely no problem with people being late. Samantha Healy, 8:42 p.m. Not good enough. Give me the footnote, Mavanway. Yes, indeed. As an academic, says Caitlin, who has translated, studied, and worked with one of the hagiographies, I am trying really hard to keep my mouth shut. Caitlin, you're not here to keep your mouth shut. You are here to contribute everything you know to this discussion. Absolutely. And come here, if I'm wrong, please do correct me, because I'm not infallible. I make mistakes. I'm human too. I know, hard to believe. Ola Conrad is in Denmark, late because of tea with a druid online until... Come here, that sounds like a brilliant reason to be late, especially around the time of Imbolc, you know. But give me the footnote, you know. Copy this. I'm just saying, and I definitely didn't want to make Zoe feel like I'm picking on her or making... I'm just making a point. A lot of stuff gets copied and pasted, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And people go, oh, that's amazing, and continue to copy. What are the sources for that information? Where does that come from? Where was that first said? That's what I want to know. Peter Kennedy is in Balbriggan. Hello, Peter. Good evening to you. You're not always right, but you're seldom wrong, Anthony, says Sally. I don't know. I'm probably wrong more often than you imagine. But yeah, I'm still fallible. That's the main thing. I always want sources, says Mel, because there's a lot of stuff that gets perpetuated. Okay. We're all good so far, right? Now, scholars have delved diligently and deeply in search of Indo-European associations. Even the extensive and dynamic modern folklore surrounding Bridget has been interpreted as being essentially pagan. And if you look at the footnote there, the footnote points you to Kim McCone, Pagan Past and Christian Present in Early Irish Literature, something I haven't read. I presume it's a paper or it's a chapter of a book, because it's page 161 to 78, or a paper in a journal. I must get that and read it. Sounds like something I'd be really interested in. Others have stressed Christian elements, especially her virginity and her access to divine power. How is it possible to make sense of this riot of reinvention? So I suppose you can get the sense with the paper that I wouldn't call it a bias necessarily, but there is definitely a notion here that the stuff that's being propagated about Brigid now, that claims that she was pre-Christian, is that's a good word that she uses here, is a reinvention, you know. Arguably, her characteristics, culled from texts written in different centuries in different languages and for different reasons, have propelled the study of the saint into territories distant from the historicity emphasized by the earliest texts written about her. Most damagingly, the composite Brigit obscures what Thomas Charles Edwards has identified as key to her early cult: its variety, its particularity, and its appeal to distinct audiences, elements that can be carefully differentiated and analysed. So it's interesting that she refers to the composite Brigid, as if the Brigid that all people talk about when they're referring to a goddess is a composite. And that may well be true, but anyway. Brigid was, and this paper will examine how Brigid was thoroughly grounded and historicized during the crucial early phase of cult development. She acquired characteristics that celebrated her as a woman, while also asserting her uniqueness. In effect, Brigid was made real. Why then has her actuality been so questioned within both scholarship and popular culture? Now, the question I have here is, which scholars are questioning her actuality? Because one thing that I felt, sorry, I'm just taking a margin note here. One thing that I felt when I had completed reading this paper was, so there's tons of sources for all the stuff relating to Saint Brigid and the Christian Brigid. But where this writer is referring to people who have promulgated the idea of a pre-Christian goddess, of a composite Brigid, etc., she's not naming who they are. She's not quoting the sources. She's not telling us, well, where are? Like, I could be guilty of that. I've said a lot and written a lot about Brigid over the past 2 decades. I could be one of those. She could footnote and say, Anthony Murphy, Mythical Ireland, said in a talk in Kildare in 2023, because I gave a talk about Brigid last year. You know, that was one thing that I thought the paper was shy on, was actually telling us who are the people who are promulgating the idea that Brigid the saint is actually based on Brigid the goddess, apart from Mary Condren, who gets clear credit in footnote 10 as being something of a principal culprit. Fair play to you, Mary, by the way, because Mary's work is fantastic. So that's a question. Where are the sources? Who are the people who are reinventing Brigid? Because I feel that ELva Johnston is a little bit shy about telling us that. Anyway, the life of Cogitosus dates to it is accepted that, this is not definitive, it is accepted, presumably by scholars, that the life of Cogitosus, and again, Cogitosus was the monk based at Kildare who wrote one of the lives of Brigid, one of the hagiographies, dates to early in the 3rd quarter of the 7th century. So sometime between 650 and 660, it would seem like, because the 3rd quarter would be 650 to 675 AD. So was that 650 to 665 AD, sometime around then? And was composed for the great monastery of Kildare, which claimed Brigid as its patron. Cogitosus was admired as the founder of Irish hagiography by Mochu MacThaney, author of the influential life of St. Patrick. The date of the Vita Prima, that's the other life of St. Brigid, is less secure. The Bollandists believed that it was the earliest of the lives, hence its name in modern scholarship. It has been linked to the clerical authors Ultan of Ardbraccan, died 657 AD, and Aileron of Clonard died 665 AD, both of whom were believed to have written about the saint. The lives share roughly 30 episodes, although not in the same order, nor with identical wording and details, complicating their relationship. So, in other words, the two separate lives of St. Brigid are apparently relaying the same events, but they never agree completely on the details, and the chronology is askew from one to the other. This replication is one of the main reasons the scholars have argued that the life by cogitosis was incorporated alongside other traditions as part of the creation of Vita Prima by a compiler perhaps working in the 8th century. So the suggestion being that the Vita Prima comes after cogitosis. However, the reverse argument has also been made, with a mid-7th century Vita Prima providing basic raw materials for the more polished and literary text by cogitosis. The consensus is that while Vita Prima may not be earlier than cogitosis, it contains a preponderance of 7th century matters and affords insights into the cult of Bridget during that era. Thus, cogitosis, this is page 5 if you're following the document, provides a full account of how Bridget's status powered Kildare's extensive ecclesiastical ambitions. Folks, very important words. Kildare's, quote, extensive ecclesiastical ambitions. Remembering that behind every character, behind every saint and influential person of the church, behind every high king, behind every warrior who becomes famous, yes, there are stories about the things that they did in their lives, but there are also underlying, it's human life. There's the underlying politics of the era in which they lived. The local politics and the national politics. There's always politics. And when it comes to the church, there's always politics. Michelle says, regardless of the limitations of this paper, it's great to see a more academic research on Bridget in the public realm, and thanks for discussing it. Reading it as you talk. Yeah, I agree. It is. It's great to see it. It all contributes to the debate, and I'm certainly not in a position to argue it exhaustively. I'm just going to make a few points. That's all I'm going to do. But yes, 100%. Basic and essential part, says Joan, of college learning is, if not all learning, is you have to show the source. I read it on the internet, so it must be true. Lisa Gale says, I appreciate a good reference too, but how does that sit alongside a culture with deep roots in oral storytelling traditions? Ah, yes, indeed. But like my father told me, and his grandfather told him, for me is much more secure than I copied and pasted it from a website which doesn't give any sources. But yes, I take the point. I take the point. It's a good point. But, you know, there's that whole thing about the oral tradition that you shouldn't alter a story, that it should be preserved as it is relayed from generation to generation. The Vitae share methodological biases. Wow, what a word. As well as drawing on the same fund of miracle stories. Another very important phrase here, folks, miracle stories. We'll get to the reason, well, the principal reason that I'm highlighting that. Miracle stories. Both were composed by male ecclesiastics. Not surprising in a society where high status men were favored over other groups, regardless of gender. That's important, an important point. Texts linked with the veneration of saints are amongst the most valuable for this examination because of their efforts to depict the lived world in which the saint operated. And we come to one of the great values of the hagiographies of Bridget, is that they actually tell us something of the lives of the ordinary people and the social circumstances and the political structure that existed at the time that they were written. So I'm going to skip forward I thought this was very interesting. I'm just throwing it out there. It's not really massively relevant to the detailed discussion that I'm getting into. Kathy May Deo has joined us. Hello, Kathy May. Good afternoon to you. And it is this. Furthermore, so, this whole thing about gender and the role of women in society, etc., etc. Gender is neither monolithic nor identical with biological sexual difference. An insight highlighted in recent scholarship that emphasizes the gender continuum in preference to a binary. A useful illustration is the rare case of an Irish woman inheriting her father's estate. But furthermore, some early church fathers, wait to hear this, believed that ascetic virgins could transcend the female state and be spiritually transformed into men, ridding themselves of an inherent susceptibility to sin. My margin comment here at this point was "Good God!" ! Shocked face emoji. But there you go. Yes. The early life of Monena, died 517 AD, abbess and founder of Kelevi. She is celebrated as having a manly soul in a female body. Repeat earlier, shocked face, marginalia. Making Bridget real as a saint is the next section. I need some water. And Caitlin tells us that gender and the role of women in ancient Ireland and the Brehon laws is one of those things that has been conflated on the internet because it's appealing to modern feminist perspectives, but it is sadly completely inaccurate. I look forward to a paper about that, Caitlin. That sounds like a fascinating subject, and I think you're probably just the person to write it. Liam Smith is in the house. Hi, Liam. Good to see you. Hope you're keeping well. So, cogitosis is an official vita. It's it's a sanctioned life. It's a sanctioned biography, or a hagiography, if you prefer, meant to serve Kildare theologically, institutionally, and politically. And I don't think we could underline NB enough in that context. He underpins Kildare's episcopal status through portraying the positive relationship between Bridget and Bishop Cunlodge, Kildare's other patron. Cogitosis focuses on a small number of main themes, especially the importance of virginity and Bridget's role within secular and ecclesiastical society. Vita Prima has a different hinterland. It lacks the intense monastic focus of cogitosis and appears to address as wide a readership as possible. Telling arguments have been made about its political positioning, one that projects a harmonious relationship between the cults of Brigid and Patrick. Because, for reasons that we will see, and reasons that may be obvious to some of you already, Bridget and Patrick, let's say that some of what was written about both of them, including some of what's in the lives, is propaganda. And both Kildare and Armagh were vying for supremacy in terms of being the centre of Christendom in Ireland, I suppose you might call it, the power centre, you know. Yeah, problem is these days, Joan, as you well know, a lot of listeners and readers decide what to believe anyway, regardless of what sources are thrown at them. If it, like, what is it called? Cognitive bias, is that what it's called? Where you just say, oh yeah, I like that conforms with my worldview, so that's the version I'm accepting, you know. The fact that it is written, that is the Vita Prima, in Latin may seem to limit its reach, given that this was the language of a very small number of people, mainly members of a literate elite. However, Latin texts could be translated for vernacular delivery. The very fact that so much of Vita Prima foreshadows the written tradition about Bridget that became dominant in Irish language sources makes this an attractive possibility. The Bridget of, I'm on page 9 if you're following, and by all means you'll want to read this in your own time. and make your own highlights and underlines and margin notes, including shocked faces and good God and all that stuff. The Brigid of which God was I referring to when I said good God? That is the question. The Brigid of Cogitosus is consistently portrayed as an ideal virgin who incarnates Kildare's importance through her virtues, transcending any negative connotations of her gender. He creates a Brigid who is relevant to a monastic audience. Cogitosus aims to inculcate profound theological lessons through his vita, and the achievement is impressive. The hagiographer's meaningful focus on virginity contributes to an image of the saint that is rooted in her power and in her empathy for those who lack it. Cogitosus's Brigit lives the Christian virtues. Most Irish lives, Latin and vernacular, do refer to their subject's virginity, but stereotypically, a saint is a virgin and a virgin is a saint. Moreover, virginity was particularly stressed for female sanctity because women were believed to be more prone to sexual sin than men. And this comes with an important caveat, which is by men. So where it is said that women were believed to be more prone to sexual sin than men, by men. It was men that believed that, not women. Cogitosus was not simply citing a Christian commonplace, however, and is far more interested in the moral power of virginity than almost any other Irish hagiographer. The saint's virginity is foundational to all that she achieves. And in fact, one of her miracles is that she heals a lapsed virgin of pregnancy, causing it to disappear. Shocked face emoji yet again, folks. But I'm a man, conscious of that. Probably not going to comment too much on that one, but draw your own conclusions and, have your own thoughts about it. Brigit healed a lapsed virgin. So, lapsed. It's an interesting way of putting it, isn't it? I mean, you're either a virgin or you're not. No, I'm a lapsed virgin, Like, yeah. And one would have said that's not something you can get back. But miraculously, she gets it back, thanks to Bridget. Anyway, enough said about that. Yeah, and some people's reaction is WTF. Is this candid camera, says Catherine. I'm only joking. Yeah. This is an interesting one. Brigid is frequently at prayer. Unlike Patrick, whose prayers in Murchu's Vita, as in the life of St. Patrick, are tightly linked to his role as a vessel for destructive public displays of divine wrath. WRATH. And my margin note, well, not really a margin note, it's at the top. It says, the God of the Old Testament, the angry, jealous one, which will become relevant in a moment. That was my instinctual note about that Patrick's role of prayer was as in, I'm praying that he gets what's coming to him, the bastard, destructive public displays of divine wrath. Throat's getting dry, you have to be careful here. And we're already over the hour mark. Brigit's prayers, on the other hand, are contemplative. In one miracle, Brigit is described at prayer while journeying in her chariot. One of the two horses breaks free of the yoke, but the saint is so deep in contemplation that she does not notice. God intervenes so that the yoke remains suspended, and Brigit continues to travel onwards, engrossed in the divine. One of the criticisms, I don't know how significant this is, one of the criticisms I would have of any authoritative article dealing with the lives of the saints is, let's call a spade here, folks. These are things that didn't happen. These miracles are just not only unlikely, they're impossible. These are fantastical mythological occurrences. This is myth, is what this is. This is not biography, you know. You know. Sorry, I'm just taking another margin note. This is myth, not biography. In another version of it, in the Vita Prima, Brigid is accompanied by a nun and a charioteer, while a king acts as a bystander, making the entire scene cluttered. In Cogitosis, Brigid throws her wet clothes over a sunbeam to dry. Yeah. Believing the beam to be a solid tree. Cogitosis states that her eyes are dazzled, but the implication is that she is dazzled by God and moves through the exterior world as if it were transparent. I suppose this is an important point, if you like. Brigit has witnesses for these miracles, but unlike Muracu's Patrick, there is no overt public display of dominance. There is no enemy. Fascinating. Brigit's luminous power is the natural outgrowth of her inner purity. It allows her to negotiate a movement from an interior world, which could be coded as female, into a public male world. I'm going to skip on, conscious of time. Brigid herself is the subject of a vision within Vita Prima that results her being glorified as a type of the Virgin Mary. And of course, Brigid is known as Mura na Nail, the Mary of the Irish. I think I'm okay, Mavanway. I think it's just a dry throat from all the talking I'm doing. I know I do talking every week, but I'm getting very excited, I think, you know. Anthony started coughing as soon as I lit my pipe. Should I? That's what it is, Rex. It's you lighting your pipe in Louisiana. The smoke has drifted across the Atlantic here into the Boyne Valley. Yeah. Wendy, I love that point. This is a myth, which gives her a sort of goddess status, regardless of a prior Celtic goddesses. Well, it's a point that's not made in a lot of these expert papers and books that have been written about the saints. Is that they're relaying the miracle, but they don't state it often enough, or sometimes they don't really state it at all. That this is purely mythological material. This is none of this actually happened, you know. Where was I? Cogitosis is certainly not one note. His Brigit appeals on a number of levels, not least because of her profound circumvention of the deeply unequal social hierarchy, which is a very important point, that suffused early medieval Irish life. Sean Connolly, who's somebody who's written about Brigit, notes that 23 of the 32 chapters of Cogitosis are concerned with the poor, the socially outcast, and with the duties of hospitality towards all, regardless of station. So it's clear that if Brigit existed as a real person, regardless of the fantastic miracles that are attributed to her, she was a person who believed in charity and hospitality. The usual easy assumption of elite dominance in Irish hagiography is upended. Brigit is the child of nobles, but not their champion. She was born into a noble family, but she doesn't champion the noble cause. She champions anybody who she feels deserves it, no matter what their position in life. Rich or poor, powerful or powerless, free or unfree. She's also, it's interesting that she's associated with agricultural labour and husbandry. She's the provider of deceptively simple miracles that locate her firmly within the lives of ordinary people, reminding the monastic audience of Christ's care for the poor, leavened with an Irish twist. These include miracles involving harvesting, livestock, pigs, cattle, sheep, and weaving. Now, I'm just thinking out loud, and that's all I'm doing, because agriculture has, of course, been important to our way of life since it was brought here around 6,000 years ago at the beginning of the Neolithic. And I'm wondering if that association with agriculture and husbandry isn't perhaps even the slightest indication of the basis upon an older figure, because some of the pre-Christian deities of Ireland have distinct agricultural themes in their stories. Caitlin is asking, has this author actually read the original, or is she working off of translations and secondary scholarship? Speaking from experience, there's loads of mistakes of differing perspectives that can arise from relying on these translations. She talks about that early on, I think. A note on editions. Neither of the two early Hiberno-Latin lives of St. Brigid, Vita Sancta Brigite by Cogitosus and the anonymous Vita Prima Sancta Brigite, have a modern published edition. I use the texts as edited by John Colgan in, can't pronounce it, Triadis Thaumaturgae Seu Devorum Patrici Columbae e Brigite Trium Veteris et Maioris Scotiae Seu Hiberniae Sanctorum Insulae Communium Patronum Acta, Louvain 1647, 516-26, Cogitosus 527-45, Vita Prima. I've also consulted Sean Connolly, Vita Prima Sancta Brigite, a critical edition, unpublished PhD thesis, University College Dublin 1970, and Richard Sharp's unpublished editions of both texts. Translations are more readily available for readers. Therefore, I cross-reference Colgan with Sean Connolly and Jean-Michel Picard, translator, Cogitosus's Life of St. Brigid, Content and Value, Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland, 1987. And Sean Connolly, trans, Vita Prima Sancta Brigite, Background and Historical Value, Journal of the Royal Society of Antiquaries of Ireland. The translations are based on unpublished editions and do not always have the same capitular numbering as Colgan. I don't know if that helps, Caitlin, answer your question. Cogitosus does not engage in direct criticism of rulers. Everyday life and everyday concerns illuminated by Brigid's sanctity. Her work is clearly gendered in accordance with Irish norms and expectations. However, her miraculous power acts for both women and men. Brigid declares that the sons of kings are, this is a passage in Vita Prima, where the sons of kings are sons of serpents and of blood, except for a few elected of God. This radical and startling denunciation resonates through several connected chapters in the Vita, where violence across various social groups is criticised. And these have been analysed in detail by Richard Sharp. This is page 12, by the way, of the paper, who demonstrates that they relate to the practice of Givurg, a type of lawlessness in which bands of armed men committed murder and devastation. These passages are a witness to destructive and unpredictable mayhem, also powerfully described by Adolf in his Vitae Columbae, his life of Columba. In other words, in early medieval times, sometimes society was just chaotic, and there was a lot of murder and mayhem. In consecutive episodes, this is Vita Prima. Brigid uses miraculous subterfuge to save Connell and Carpera, feuding royal brothers and ancestors of competing Ineil branches from each other, causes Connell to repent, as does a king in the Midland region of Brega who unjustly tries to kill a prisoner. The image of Brigid as peacemaker is a powerful and profound critique of just say the word, Anthony, of aristocratic Irish society. Brigid is distinguished by, this is page 13, a commitment to virginity and to the poor. She is depicted living a simple existence and engaged in the manual labour expected of a woman. Brigid's mission to illuminate the ordinary with the divine ties her to the rhythms of Irish agriculture, of harvest and of husbandry. And even that fact now has just some familiarity bells ringing in my head, shall we put it that way. that she's tied to the rhythms of Irish agriculture. I mean, the author doesn't say it here, but I mean, that alone, as somebody who would be interested in the pre-Christian deities, that alone would be saying, I wonder, she's tied with the rhythms of Irish agriculture. That Irish agriculture came into the country 4,500 years before Bridget actually lived, Anyway, I'll press on. Throughout the Vita, it is hard to tell that Bridget was imagined as coming into adulthood in the midst of great social and religious change. And of course, the backdrop to some of that is the Roman Empire is beginning to crumble. And of course, there's the fact that there's an Irish church that develops that is particularly not obstreperous, but a little bit difficult to govern from the point of view of the rules that it makes, especially around Easter, which is all sorted out at the Synod of Whitby in the 660s, where Ireland is told, listen, fall into line with the way the rest of us are doing it. Page 15, I have a lot of highlights here, so I'll read some of this. Let me just go back a sentence or half a sentence. The life foregrounds, I'm not sure which one, Vita Prima, I presume it's talking about here. The life foregrounds that the saint's mother, Brugshek, is a slave who endures a series of deeply unequal relationships until Bridget manages to buy her freedom, creating a moving parallel between freedom and Christianization. The saint is raised in the household of a poet and then of a second druid. The latter experiences visions and insights while still a pagan, including a dream of Bridget's miraculous baptism. It is the druid who facilitates the arrangement, as he recognizes his own impurity is the reason that young Bridget cannot eat his food without vomiting. Now that rang bells, I could tell you, and I immediately started making margin notes, and I'll tell you why in a moment. I'm just going to catch up on any comments. Catherine Dempsey Williams is saying, thanks so much for all your work into this. Quite extraordinary, all of it, for sure. I think it's just very fascinating, and we can't probably reach firm conclusions about a lot of it, but there's just some commentary that needs to be made, I suppose, Lily Shambles, 2 weeks in a row, I don't get an hello. Well, hang on a second. Lily, hello. Lily, hello. Welcome. I hope that makes up for it. Sorry, apologies. I must have missed your comment. Was probably flying up the screen. Mark Gordon, a question I have, is a myth a literary vehicle, which is neither true or false, but its sole purpose is to teach a moral or for entertainment? Yeah. I would say that some of the miracles are obviously, probably a lot of them are along those lines, Deborah says, it sounds like the image of the women they wanted to see/have. Liam says, sounds like a Harry Potter spell. The vomiting brings to mind other female saint hagiographies, particularly Catherine of Siena. Well, so the druid recognizes his own impurities, the reason that young Bridget cannot eat his food without vomiting. Not the vomiting part, but the bit about her not being able to eat food, his food, as in he's druid, as in he's pagan. Just follow me here for a second. Follow me down this little rabbit hole. There's a story that we've talked about in several episodes called Altran Chia Gawathar, which is the house of the fosterage of the two methers, or the two drinking vessels, which is a story primarily concerned with Newgrange. In that story, there's Kirkog and Ethna, the two sort of principal female characters. Ethna declines the best food that is offered by Manannán, who is treated in that story as the chief of the Tuatha Danann, even above Dagda, etc. Her, quote, and this is what the story says, her accompanying demon went from her, and an angel came in its stead, i.e., she can no longer eat the food of the old gods, instead drinking the milk of the speckled cow from India. The milk from, quote, the one all-powerful God. Sorry, I shouldn't have continued. So, full stop after India. This is a new quote. The one all-powerful God caused her not to eat the food of the Tuatha Dé Danann. And what would have happened if she'd eaten the food of the Tuatha Dé Danann? Perhaps she would have vomited. But I'm just wondering if there's a connection here. Bridget, in the story in Vita Prima, can't eat the Druid's food because she'll vomit. Similar idea. Ethna in Altram Chia, unable or refusing to eat the food that Manannán offers. And the reason we're told is because the one all-powerful God, as in the God of Christianity, caused her not to eat the food of the Tuatha Dé Danann, the old pagan deities. And so there's a contrast here with Patrick, St. Patrick, particularly in Moroku's Life of St. Patrick, his Vita. The latter offers a model of confrontational conversion in which belief systems collide with only one winner. And we see that played out at Slane when the Paschal fire is lit and Lera had sent his druids, and there's a big battle happens. The druids, some of them are at least are converted to Christianity. It is also rapid, taking place within the span of Patrick's triumphal mission. Vita Prima suggests a very different model in which change is gradual and non-confrontational, i.e. probably more realistic. One of the major events involving both saints in Vita Prima takes place at an assembly at Talchu, where Brigid miraculously clears Bishop Brone of a false accusation of paternity. Wouldn't you just love to bring the DNA tests back a millennium and a half? Yeah. Bridget is most easily interpreted, this is page 16 now, as a saint inspired by New Testament models, contrasting with Old Testament archetypes that are so central to the cult of Patrick. And I think that sort of relates to the comment I made at the top of the page several pages ago about the Old Testament jealous, angry God. And that was at the top of page 10, where Patrick's prayer was used as a role for destructive public displays of divine wrath. And we get that with the Old Testament Yahweh. And if you're particularly interested in that subject, we've addressed that in the episode that we did about Jung's book, Answer to Job, which was last year sometime. I think it might have even been the year before. Excuse me, pardon me. Let me just find that on the channel. Just tell you what episode it was. Answer to Job. Live Irish Myths episode 149. Wow, that was sometime in 2022. Number 149. So you can find all the previous episodes on the YouTube channel, Mythical Ireland YouTube. They are also on Facebook, but I just think they're a little bit harder to find on Facebook. I think YouTube, if you go to the channel, there's a search channel, and you can just search and just type in Answer to Job, or you can go into live and search down through the numbers of episodes. Bridget actively seeks to adopt the liturgy of Rome. She sends experts there to be taught it and return to Ireland with that knowledge. When one adds this to the large number of miracles associated with church holidays, it's hard to avoid the conclusion that Vita Prima is placing Christian belief within the context of correct liturgical practice, an area of ongoing debate in the early Irish medieval church, especially in relationship to the celebration of Easter, which we talked about earlier. Daniel McCarthy has perceptively noted that Cogitosus mentions just 5 individual place names and 7 personal names in his life, while Vita Prima includes 21 different place names and 24 personal names, of which 11 are also found in the medieval Irish chroniclers. The individuals appear in the right generations relative to a 5th and 6th century Brigit, and this goes a long way towards creating historically plausible locales and connections between local people. So regardless of the miracles, some of the other material there actually appears to be based at the right time among the right people. Okay. Indulgences. Brigid offers the king of Leinster eternal life and kingship for his descendants in return for her father's sword, which is in his possession, and the freedom of one of his servants. In other words, she's suggesting that he converts, but I just have the word indulgences written in there. If you give me something, I can guarantee you eternal life. Wow. There's something too about the actual political struggle that was going on between the Ineal and the Leinstermen, and this is historically resonant, as the Ineal carved out their own power, especially in the Midlands and at the expense of Leinster. Okay, I'm going to move on to page 19. Genealogies developed as an important genre, and it has been argued that they were being written from at least the 7th century, while continuing to be updated over time. They were impressively detailed, revealing a concern with the descent of major and minor peoples, using kinship, without the G, kinship, as a connective tissue joining small and great. Moreover, having a saint as a member of the family brought prestige, and the genealogies of saints developed into a vibrant subgenre in its own right. As Paul Grosjean, I don't know how to pronounce that, Grosgean, Grosjean, perceptively remarked, genealogy was a hagiographical coordinate among the early medieval Irish. Wait till you hear this. Even Patrick, a Romano-Briton, was given an extended native family, mediated through fosterage and invented sisters, who gave birth to a swarm of nieces and nephews. And I've written here in the margin a note which says, in other words, much of Patrick's family tree was utterly fabricated. And again, this is the sort of stuff, I remember there being histories of Ireland in which the Christian history of Ireland was relayed by, quite often, the person who wrote that chapter of the book, or that book in its entirety, was a brother, a priest, a nun, or whatever. So it was in their interest to promulgate the idea and the notions that Patrick and Bridget did all these things and all the rest. None of them ever made such remarks. Let's just gloss over the fact that a lot of Patrick's genealogy was completely fabricated, shall we? Because that doesn't support, but rather it undermines our contentions about him. Just a brief comment here about Bridget helping the poor of her bloodline, the Fothart of Kildare, Fothairt. They were the people. So she is an affiliation with the Iechtic, a minor people known as the Fothart, Fothairt, who claimed the descent from Jochi Find Fuanart. And again, we're talking this time again about Vita Prima exemplifies the use of Bridget as a symbol of communal identity. This is page 21. Through the prediction of her birth and future greatness to Jochi, ancestor of the Fothart, asserting that great honour will come to his descendants through Bridget. Moreover, of course, don't forget, this stuff was all written. This is all retrospective. This is all written long after she's dead, you know. Moreover, this honour is explicitly connected with Kildare, called the city of Caher Carpri, after a legendary ancestor of the kings of Leinster. Bridget herself is described as, quote, another Mary, comma, mother of the great Lord, unquote, deploying similar Marian imagery to that in Vita Prima. Now, we get on to the real meat. And it's 9:30, so I won't be talking about Imbolc today, I don't think. Should do an episode tomorrow about Imbolc then, shouldn't we? Will I do a bonus episode tomorrow? Yes or no in the comments. Will I do a bonus episode of Live Irish Myths tomorrow about Imbolc? Because we didn't get the chance to talk about Imbolc tonight. Zoe says, I posted my sources twice. Brilliant. I did not see them, Zoe, but I will have a look through the comments. Don't worry. And I'm glad to hear that. Yes. Loads of yeses straight away. Yes from Gemma. Caitlin, long story short, there's a pagan goddess with the same name. Then there's the medieval saint of the same name that was what we would call a nun. And the two kind of got blended together. I think that's probably more accurate. Jackie McCandless is saying, Imbolc blessings to the mighty Tua. And the same to you, Jackie. Thank you. I'll join if I can, says Mavanway, and lots of yeses. Mel, I love a bonus episode. I'd love a bonus episode. Excellent. Which means I have to do one tomorrow night. That's fine. For a 7th century audience, Brigit's historicity was unassailable. In other words, for the 7th century audience, like, yeah, she existed. We don't doubt it. If anything, she is better documented than any other Irish saint. And that is, in fairness, this is very important. NB. With the exception of Patrick, of course, his own writings survived. His confessio. In other words, something he is said to have written survived. Nevertheless, her very existence has been doubted, and Brigid the goddess has come to overshadow the saint. What are the reasons for this, and what do they reveal about the cult of Brigid? Okay, I'm just taking another note here. And this is what I was saying about, so she's better documented, but nevertheless her existence has been doubted, and Brigid the goddess has come to overshadow the saint. It depends on your perspective. There are still a lot of very Christian people in Ireland for whom there's no question that Brigid is a saint. There's a lot of people who are decidedly pagan or have other views for whom the goddess predominates. There are a lot of people who are agnostic and atheistic who don't have an opinion one way or the other. Brigid the goddess overshadowing the saint, yeah, among certain people in certain circles, yes. From the outset, it needs to be emphasized that the evidence for a goddess is thin compared to that for a saint. Thin to the point where they're not reasonably comparable. Okay, but what's not said there, and not said really at all, unless it is and I missed it, and if I did, hands up and I apologize, is that, well, Cogitosus, being a monk associated with Kildare, is hardly going to write about a pre-Christian, a pagan goddess. And in fact, a lot of the compilers of the documented history, or whatever you want to call it, lore, history, genealogies, etc., were church figures. Why would they? And I know they did, and I know we've had that discussion. But that's something that has to be said. The argument that St. Brigid is the goddess in Christianized guise depends upon the interpretation of two short textual comments allied with a radical reinterpretation of the lives of Brigid. Moreover, direct written evidence is significantly later than the earliest materials focusing on the saint. The first is a short entry in the Old Irish glossary known as Sanus Cormac, a document usually attributed, at least in part, to the Munster king and bishop, Cormac MacQuillenan, died 908 AD. The glossary notes that there were 3 divine sisters named Bridget, daughters of the Dagda, associated with smithcraft, poetry, and healing. They were so important that Brigit, Brigit, became synonymous with goddess. Okay, just making a note here. So a very important question here, folks. And again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's really addressed here sufficiently, but I'm going to just ask the question. So she's making the point that one of the texts that refers to a goddess Brigit is the oft quoted Samus Cormac's glossary. Now, he died in 908, so Cormac's glossary is either early 10th century or more likely late 9th century. It's an old document, a compendium of 1,400 words and terms and proper names and place names, a lot of which are obscure and what's the word when they're completely out of use? Not just obscure, they're what's the word? Extinct. It's not the word I'm looking for, but you get me. So when we go to Bridget, we find a poetess, daughter of the Dagda. This is Bridget, the female sage or woman of wisdom, i.e., Bridget the goddess whom poets adored, because very great and very famous was her protecting care. It is therefore they call her goddess of poets by this name, whose sisters were Bridget the female physician, woman of leechcraft, Bridget the female smith, woman of smithwork, from whose names, with all Irishmen, a goddess was called Bridget. And he claims, and this material, the etymological material, is questionable. He claims that Bridget is from bro agit or bro hagit, a fiery arrow, which has been argued by linguistic scholars in particular. I'm not getting into that right now. But the point that has to be made here, and this is very important, obsolete. Yes, loads of people shouting obsolete. Apologies for not getting that. Happens to me. The word's there somewhere, and it's flowing down from the brain into the mouth onto the tongue, and just never just quite makes it. Thank you to everybody for helping with that. So the question that's not really addressed here, actually, again, I'm going to say I don't think it's addressed at all, and I will read this again. Very important question. Right, so the point is that a short entry in Cormac's glossary discusses a Bridget who's a daughter of the Dagda with sisters, a triune of goddesses called Bridget, and that the word or the name Bridget becomes synonymous with goddess. Fine. Why does a churchman in the 9th/10th century AD not mention the Christian saint as well / at all? Why is a bishop? Now, it may well be that the answer to that is because he's the Bishop of Cashel, and Cashel is not Kildare. And it may have been politically expedient to omit reference to Kildare. Is that the sole reason? I don't know, but why is that not addressed? So, yeah, whatever you make of the entry about Bridget being the smallest amount of attestation possible for the existence of a goddess, compared with the copious amount of detail we have about the Christian saint, I get that argument. I get that. She's saying, the author of this paper is saying, we've tons of information about Bridget the Saint, and a lot of it pertains to the era and the place names and the people who lived in that era and the political struggles that were going on. Whereas there are two attestations for the goddess. The second one I'm going to come to now. One of them is Cormac MacCullinan, Cormac's glossary. But the question is, why is a 10th or 9th probably century churchman not mentioning the Christian saint at all, referring only to a Bridget a goddess Brigit. And remember, if this is written in the 9th century, that's 5 centuries after the saint, lived. Adele Perth, good morning. Maybe Brigid was a very localized saint at this point, 500 years later. But okay, I might accept that, Caitlin, except for there is a discussion about, which I didn't mention in this live stream. I just thought time is pressing. There's a talk about her making a circuit of Ireland at some point, isn't there? Yes. From womb through childhood, Brigid is brought on a circuit of the entire country, connecting her to different regions before arriving as a young adult in my Liffey, the plain of the Liffey, where Kildare is located. Would seem to argue against. I'm not sure. Not sure to what extent she was brought around the country. This is a fascinating entry and can be placed alongside others that demonstrate an interest in native traditions and pre-Christian beliefs, including those concerning Lunasa and Bealtaine, which are also mentioned at Imbolc, mentioned in Sanas Cormac. We'll get to that tomorrow evening because we can't talk about Imbolc this evening because we're running out of time. The name Brigid might well echo one from a pre-Christian past, as do other common names such as Angus and Dara. Nonetheless, Sanas Cormac is generally interpreted as a creative etymological text rather than being historically accurate. And I just thought, what a convenient way to dismiss Cormac's glossary as a piece of evidence. I'm sorry, that may not have been the writer's intent, and I may be overstating it, and if I am, whatever, right? But that seems to me very dismissive. Sanas Cormac is generally interpreted as a creative etymological text rather than being historically accurate. In other words, so is Johnston saying that then the idea that there even was a Brigit, daughter of the Dagda, patron of poets and all the rest, is not historically accurate? Like that was just entirely invented by Cormac. Now I have a difficulty with that. In the same vein, and this is one of the arguments I wanted to make from the beginning, are the hagiographies not also creative texts? I've written this, since they invent a series of spurious miracles. So, I mean, are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Is there no value to Sanas Cormac? I mean, I see it quoted and referenced in pretty much everything I read about Irish mythology over the past 20 years. Cormac's glossary is in every bibliography. So could we not turn that on its head and say, well, the hagiographies, given that they invent a series of spurious and quite frankly fantastic miracles that obviously couldn't have happened, could we not also describe those as creative texts? Okay, notwithstanding the fact that they have historically accurate, apparently historically accurate information in them. What? Says Caitlin. Cormac's glossary is the oldest encyclopedia in Europe. Well, I know, but I just felt, and maybe you're arguing with me, but I just felt that statement was kind of just throwing. It was as if the author was basically taking Cormac's glossary and go, rubbish, don't need that. Delegitimizing it, or I don't know. It's the way I felt about it. I immediately made that. Calling it a creative etymological text to me seems like a convenient way of dismissing it. And yet these few lines about divine Brigits are given more credence than the very substantial and earlier literature on the saint. No footnote there. Who is saying that they're getting more credence? Where? This is one thing this paper distinctly lacks. Apart from Mary Condren's book, The Serpent and the Goddess, who are the people who are saying that Brigid the Goddess has more credence from Sanas Cormac over the lives of the saint? As Katja Ritari has pointed out, the image of Brigid as a saint should take precedence over the goddess because that is where the evidence leads. Okay? And I don't have any specific argument with that. The second source, so there were two sources. The second source is the Topographia Hibernica, not the new book by Blind Boy Boat Club, which is of the same name, but is a collection of his own short stories, and he's very inspired by Irish mythology. The second source is Topographia Hibernica by Gerald of Wales, Geraldus Cambrensis, which dates to 1188. Gerald describes a perpetual fire at Kildare. What's that lady's name? Zoe, was it? Who we were talking about sources earlier on. And I really didn't mean to single you out. I was just making a point. But Zoe, this is the perpetual fire one. Gerald describes a perpetual fire at Kildare, a detail which has proved popular, even though the Topographia is a late work and frequently fantastical. And yet again, I'm saying, the lives of the saint are frequently fantastical. They talk about miracles that couldn't have happened. It's like, yeah, it's very convenient to say that Sanus Cormac and Topographia Hibernica have their bad points, and but then we want to throw them out completely. But no, just because there's a series of ridiculously impossible miracles chronicled in the lives of the saint doesn't mean that we should describe the hagiographies as utterly fantastical. In any event, practices in 12th century Kildare are very unlikely to unchangingly channel 5th century realities, which is a fair point. I'm going to need to get a bottle of whiskey if we're doing this again tomorrow. Well, this won't be so... no, tomorrow's is just all about Imbolc, really, Caitlin. I wanted to talk about both today, but I really think this analysis raises some good points about bias on her paper to prove her hypothesis, says Michelle. Michelle, I would love you and Caitlin and everyone else to read it yourself. And in fact, it might have been better had you done that. In case I'm displaying bias, I'm agnostic. I don't worship deities, but by the time I got to the end of it, I felt there was a bias in it. This was a big part of it. How some of the sources for the goddess were basically being thrown out as fantastical, but the lives were being held up as some sort of unimpeachable truth, despite their own fantastical narratives, Caitlin Moon says hagiographies equals Christian mythology. Again, written long after Bridget lived and breathed. Well, in all cases, all of this stuff was, like, the point was made about Patrick's Confessio that he allegedly wrote that himself. I say allegedly, I don't believe it. I'm sorry, I just don't. It's propaganda on behalf of the Armagh Church to assert its primacy. Apart from these sources, the argument for the priority of the goddess over the saint depends on three interrelated points. Firstly, that Brigid is not real. Secondly, that her lives betray that they are an attempt to euhemerize a pagan deity. And finally, an underlying assumption that a goddess cult is more empowering for the women of ancient and, by analogy, contemporary Ireland. So, that Brigid is not real, I'm not sure. There probably was a real Bridget upon whom the saint is based. Okay? That's my own view. Attempts to euhemerize a pagan deity, I think that's an oversimplification of what's being said, and I'd like to see more sources. Again, I'd like to see, well, who's saying that? And exactly where are they saying it? In what publications? And quote them. Let's see their quotes. Let's see exactly, or summarize, tell us tell us exactly what they're saying before just summing it up in one sentence. I agree. The goddess cult is more empowering because the thing that makes the saint unattractive to modern women, and not attempting to speak on behalf of those women, they'll speak for themselves. I'm mansplaining, not attempting to mansplain. My impression as a man, and I'm very aware of it, and there'll be women who will talk about this and express it much more intelligently and poetically than I, is that the reason that the saint doesn't make an attractive role model is because she is still fitting into a world dominated by a male hierarchy. It's almost like they are asserting the conditions. They are assigning the traits. And this enormous infatuation with virginity is a big part of the issue for me as to why. So if I was the sort of person who was going to honor a divinity or a saint of the past, I would say that if I was less agnostic, the goddess, even though there's very little written about her, would immediately be more attractive to me than the saint. But anyway, I think I've overlabored that point. To take them in order, Brigid's reality has been doubted on the basis that the earliest Irish writers were not sure where she flourished. Or sorry, when she flourished. And now, again, there's no footnote to that statement. So which writers? So who is asserting that the reality of Brigid is doubted? Who's asserting that? It's a statement that's not followed up. Who's saying that? However, this is far from the case, and Vita Prima in particular presents a coherent narrative in which Brigid, as a younger contemporary of Patrick, contributes to a team effort to Christianize Ireland. Of course, that's all part of a lovely, fluffy Christian narrative. Brigid and Patrick went around the country and made everybody Christians and converted them, and everybody lives happily ever after because they believe in the one true God, you know? Come on. Anyway, I'm getting to the end. The lack of abundant direct evidence for the goddess is one of the regions that the Vitae have been mined for hints of paganism. So apart from Mary Condren, who else is doing this? Who else is saying that for an insight into the goddess, we should look at the life of the saint, the lives of the hagiographies of the saint? Who is saying this? I don't know, because after reading the paper, I'm not clear. Mary Condren is mentioned, but nobody else. This is reminiscent of Charles Plummer, in whose 2-volume Vitae Sanctorum Hiberniae, The Lives of the Irish Saints, published in the early years of the 20th century, remains an invaluable source for scholars. In his introduction, however, he devoted a long section to, quote, heathen folklore and mythology, unquote, in the lives of the saints, often interpreted through solar imagery. Heathen folklore and mythology in the lives of the saints. This methodology was very much of its era, comparable to the contemporary The Golden Bough by James Fraser. Now wait till you hear what's being said here. As an approach, it has been almost entirely replaced by analyses stressing the religious, social, and historical context of the lives. I think the only exception, hang on, I'll say it now in a moment. The only exception is Bridget, where it still has currency. In an important contribution, Dorothy Ann Bray points out that the fire imagery, frequently interpreted as a sign of paganism, is more likely to have resonated with the contemporary Christian readers and listeners as the fire of the Holy Spirit. the Pentecostal flame. Of course, it would be surprising if the cult of Brigid did not incorporate native belief patterns and imagery, as Christianization involved acculturation and compromise. Thanks for saying that. It's only taken you 25 pages. Something that Vita Prima demonstrates in its depiction of Druids and its treatment of the saint's childhood. It may well be that the Feast of Brigit on 1st of February is an example of this process. Wow. The feast coincides with the quarter-day festival of Imbolc, which clearly had pre-Christian origins. On the other hand, each day of the year sees the deaths of individuals, and usually a feast day's main significance lies in that fact. Its main significance is that she died that day. It's not the fact that it's tied with an old astronomical date. No, I think what was being said about my impression about her comments about Plummer and Fraser's Golden Bough was that, yeah, they were of their era and we've a different approach now. In other words, they're also now not relevant anymore. We throw them away. I don't know. Look at all these people I see online who say that Young was this, that, and the other, and Young led a cult, and Young did and wrote some damaging things about psychiatry and psychology and all the rest. Yeah, but that doesn't mean his entire work is irrelevant and gets thrown out the door. Overall, Brigid's cult is treated in a strikingly different manner to those of other saints, even when types of evidence are the same. It is an outlying survivor of Plummer's world of solar deities masquerading as saints. Wow. That's all it is. Not sure. Anyway, I'm getting to the end because I need to finish because it's nearly 2 hours. Bridget the Goddess was initially popularized during the cultural revival of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as Catherine McKenna has persuasively suggested, being particularly championed by Maud Gonne. The allure of the goddess, free from sectarian polemic, was powerful and ultimately continues to thrive. In other words, goddess worship is empowering for women, and I would just ask the question, but what about the men who worship her? Indeed, it is arguable that an actual Brigid, founder of a successful ecclesiastical centre and the inspiration for a popular cult, offers more in this regard. Ultimately, however, the debate around Brigid's reality is reductive. She was real for her followers generation upon generation. By the 7th century, the cult had a level of complexity expressed across a number of sources that points to a great historical depth. Fair enough. Kildare was her major foundation, but veneration to Brigid did not depend upon it. Carried, perhaps initially by her Fuhart kindred, the cult expanded well beyond its Leinster heartland to become truly island-wide. Her remarkable lives show Brigid's biographers shaping and reshaping this legacy, fashioning a saint who stood up for ordinary people against injustice, against power wrongfully wielded. The rich cult of St. Brigid has hardly received the scholarly attention that it deserves. The uncertainty surrounding the dating of the Vita Prima creates challenges, although not to the extent of preventing meaningful analysis and contextualization. And this is the final sentence of the work. Far more problematically, the assumption that Brigid is a construct, a hybrid goddess saint, has chilled an appreciation that the first Irish saint to be celebrated in the island's literature was a woman. Folks, your comments on that very welcome, but I'm conscious of the fact that it's 2 hours now. So I'm not going to hang around for much longer. I don't want to unnecessarily delay you. I will read through whatever comments are there. What approach, says Caitlin? She attacked from below. Even winter solstice was stolen, says Martina, by the Catholic Church. Jesus was not even born on the 25th of December. Actually, that's true, yeah. It's so convenient, isn't it, Christmas being so close to winter solstice, Oh, Maud Gonne is okay, but we have to throw out legitimate scholarship. I think that was one of my major arguments. First of all, the throwing out of legitimate scholarship. But the other one was, who are all of these people who are attesting that the goddess overshadows the saint? Who are these people who are saying that the picture or the biography of the goddess must be gleaned from the saint. Who are the scholars who are saying that Saint Brigid is clearly a euhemerized pagan god? Who are they? Tell us who they are, other than Mary Condren. I'm actually going to send this the link of this video to Mary. I know Mary, and I have her phone number, so I might ring her tomorrow and say, listen, have a look at that, read the paper, and give me your comments. Dawn Hilton says the burial chamber at Deer Park, Sligo, is shaped like a goddess woman, and you can see that from Google Maps. Surely Bridget must have had a burial chamber like that to connect her to agriculture. You mean the goddess? The only thing is the goddess. I mean, the one thing that is accurate about this, and Johnston doesn't put a foot wrong there, is that if you go onto the internet and research the goddess Bridget, you'll find websites that have big long pages of information about the goddess Bridget was this and she was that and she did this and she did that and she did the other. Where are the sources? Because the only two sources that mention a goddess called Bridget are Geraldus Cambrensis and Cormac MacQuillan. So you give me the footnotes for all the rest of the stuff. That's what I want to know, right? Yes, like what is the tomb of Bridget? Well, there isn't one that we know of, in megalithic terms, Thanks, Karina. Glad you enjoyed it. Desiree says, great episode. Yeah, no, not a single sound out of the dogs tonight. Thank you, Wendy. Glad you enjoyed it. Food for thought, if nothing else. I'm not trying to make I'm not trying to make a solid case or anything. There's just some things that I thought there was a little lack of balance in it. That's all. And there are just certain things that I would like to hear more about, One could argue the same for Hildegard de Bingen. She existed within the man's world. This is the man's world. Doom, 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 doom. Yeah, entertainment with education. Lovely night. And with the Mythical Ireland family, keep safe. Don't forget, we'll come back tomorrow night and do a bit about Imbolc, or if you prefer, Imbolc. DNA should be done on that skull bone, says John McHugh. Any relic of any saint should be DNA tested. Yeah. Zoe says, it's just a fire and prayers. Ah, exactly. It's only a fire. She was the working woman's equivalent of the Virgin Mary. Brian Cahill says, I saw her green and gold last week in Fort. Yeah. There's a stone in Fort where there's a concave, sort of circular hollow in it, and somebody's painted white around it. And apparently, this is a head healing stone. If you've got problems with your head, like headaches or whatever, you stick your head in the stone and you ask Bridget to help you, and she'll get rid of your headaches. Mel is planning on reading the whole paper tonight. Yeah, and come here, listen, I advise you, read the whole thing yourselves, make your own margin notes and highlights, and make your own minds up about it. That is just purely my first thoughts, having read it once and highlighted sections and made margin notes. And I was even still making them tonight as I was going. Just pointing out certain places where I felt it was just slightly deficient. And I'm not putting the author down in any way. I'm sure that she's a much more learned scholar than I am. Absolutely no doubt about it. Okay, I think that's us caught up. I think if I missed anybody, and especially if I missed saying hello to anybody, I do apologize. So what happens here on the web page I'm looking at it, all your comments from both Facebook and YouTube come in, and they scroll up very quickly, and it's very easy to miss comments. So apologies. Thank you, Jackie. Glad. Ola wants me to repeat the link. No problem at all. This is where you can download a copy of that paper, which, by the way, is called Making. I'm just pasting it in as a comment on YouTube and Facebook. Making St. Brigid Real in the Early Middle Ages. The author is ELva Johnston from the School of History at University College Dublin. So very interesting and certainly thought-provoking. I mean, if you're publishing a paper and you're not provoking debate and discussion, well, I mean, okay, that's not necessarily the job of an academic scholar, but I mean, I think it's good. I think it's a good sign. Many don't know that Patrick wrote. This is Michelle again. Many don't know that Patrick wrote and less about Sonus Cormac and Vita Prima, etc. Love spreading the word through my lesson plans or in conversation. Not following you 100% there, Michelle. Many don't know that Patrick wrote and less about Sonus Cormac. Yeah. And the link to your book, says Rachel, that is the Fornox monograph. I'm delighted to say that book will include biographical information about P.J. Hartnett, who's the archaeologist who excavated Fornox, and pictures from the excavation. Some never before seen pictures. Yeah, lots of stuff. So I hope that you really enjoy that. So that link has been shared there. It's mythicalireland.com. But if you don't want to type out that big long order, or if you can't click on it, just go to that big long link even. Go to mythicalireland.com. Just find the shop. Who else did I miss? Did I miss anyone? Thank you, Anthony, says Peter Whitson. You're very welcome, Peter. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Excellent point, Mel, says Joan McHugh. Brilliant stuff. And other people saying thanks. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll come back tomorrow night and talk about Imbolc. My intention tonight was to talk about Bridget and Imbolc, but I realise now I was trying to bite off more than I could chew. I hope you've enjoyed this longer than usual episode about this new paper about Saint Brigid, and I hope that I've made my points diligently and fairly, and look forward to hearing more about the whole thing. When can tickets be bought for your tour in April, May, and June? Are you talking about the Newgrange farm? They're all available now on your days out, but there's a specific widget address for my tours, and if you click on get tickets, it shows you the calendar, and the dates are in green. So the 2nd of April, 19th of April, 30th of April, 14th and 28th of May. These are mostly Tuesdays. There's one Friday date. 11th and 25th of June, 9th and 23rd of July, and 6th and 20th of August. So I'll just paste that link in there now. If you're interested in booking a ticket on one of my Newgrange Farm, Archaeological Park, and Newgrange Chamber tours, we do our Newgrange Farm, but we also go into the chamber. I'm just sharing that there now. See you tomorrow. Brilliant stuff, Adele. Have a great Tuesday. And to all the rest of you, especially those west of me in Canada and the States and in South America, have a great rest of your Monday. To all those of you in Europe, have a great Monday night. And yeah, we'll see you tomorrow evening, because tomorrow we're going to talk about Imbolc, which we were supposed to do in this episode. But anyway, I'll rename this one when I upload the title graphic to YouTube. I'll just call it Bridget, Saint or Goddess. Interesting stuff. Night, everyone. Thanks a million for tuning in. And Adele's coming home for a month. Brilliant. I look forward to seeing you. Super stuff. Brilliant. Fantastic news. I lasted the discussion. Thanks all. Anthony, Tom King, etc. Brilliant stuff, Michael. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us. And Joan, lovely to see you. Take it easy. Íchomhaíoch Colasov. Slán go fóil agus tó go bugé na dína go